There are two men in this story. The first is a rap titan, a larger-than-life figure who built an empire on decadence, a man whose very stage name, Rick Ross, became synonymous with boundless appetite and unapologetic luxury. He was the boss, a kingpin of sheer mass and presence, a man who rapped about Maybachs and Moscato while living in a body that was a testament to that very excess. The second man is the one you see today. Leaner, sharper, a man who moves with a different kind of gravity, not of mass but of focused intensity. This is the story of how the first man willingly walked into a furnace of his own making and allowed the second to emerge, forged in discipline. This is the story of how Rick Ross resculpted a legend. It wasn't a sudden whim. It wasn't a New Year's resolution scribbled on a napkin. The change began not with a mirror, but with a sound. The sound of his own struggling breath. Imagine the scene, the height of his success, mansions, cars, platinum plaques lining the walls. Yet, in the quiet moments, a different reality was settling in. The simple act of climbing a flight of stairs would leave him winded, his heart hammering against his ribs like a frantic prisoner. The weight, once a part of his imposing image, had become a warden, locking him away from his own life. There were the public moments, too. The jokes, the memes, the endless commentary on his size. But the true catalyst is always more intimate, more terrifying. For Rick Ross, it was a series of health scares, silent alarms that screamed in the dead of night. Seizures, hospital visits, the cold, sterile air of a medical room where the language isn't about chart positions or record sales, but about blood pressure, cholesterol, and life expectancy. The empire of the boss was being threatened not by a rival, but by the very foundation it was built upon. He stood at a crossroads that every person, famous or not, eventually faces. Continue on the path of comfortable decay, or choose the agonizing uphill path of rebirth. He chose the mountain. The mental shift had to come first. Every physical transformation begins not in the gym, but in the mind. It requires a brutal, unvarnished audit of the self. Rick Ross had to deconstruct the very persona he had built. The man who rapped about whole pots of lobster Alfredo, about banana pudding by the gallon, now had to look at those lyrics not as anthems of success, but as a recipe for his own demise. He had to divorce his identity from his appetite. This was more than dieting. This was a psychological revolution. He had to become the CEO of his own body, making decisions not based on fleeting cravings, but on a long-term strategic plan for survival. He had to want a different future more than he wanted the immediate gratification of the present. He had to trade the temporary comfort of a rich meal for the profound satisfaction of being able to breathe freely, to play with his children without exhaustion, to truly inhabit the life he had worked so hard to build. The boss was used to giving orders. Now he had to give the toughest order of his life to himself. And so, the blueprint was drawn. The first and most dramatic battlefield was the kitchen. The pantry of a king was systematically overthrown. Out went the sugar-laden sodas, the processed foods, the gravies, the mountains of carbs. The legendary feasts were replaced with a new kind of bounty: lean proteins, green vegetables, complex carbohydrates measured not by the pound, but for purpose. This wasn't about deprivation. It was about recalibration. He hired a chef, not to create decadence, but to engineer fuel. Breakfast became egg whites and turkey bacon. Lunch was grilled fish and asparagus. Dinner was a carefully portioned balance of nutrients designed to repair and energize. He famously had the pool at his sprawling Georgia estate, the promised land, filled in. To many, it was a symbol of his success. To him, it had become a symbol of stagnation. He didn't need a pool for leisure. He needed land for labor. He replaced the water with soil and built a farm, planting collard greens, cucumbers, watermelon. He wasn't just changing his diet. He was changing his relationship with the earth, with sustenance itself. The man who once commanded fleets of cars was now tending to seedlings, understanding the source of his strength from the ground up. Then came the forge, the gym. And not just any gym, but the brutal, unfortifying world of professional boxing training. He didn't start with light jogs on a treadmill. He walked into a ring. He embraced the disciplines of fighters, jump rope that left him gasping, footwork drills that challenged his coordination, heavy bag work that channeled his frustration into focused power. The weight room became a sanctuary of suffering. Where he once lifted heavy weights to build mass, he now focused on high-intensity interval training, circuit training, anything that would torch calories and build functional lean muscle. The workouts were not optional. They were appointments with his future self that he could not miss. Personal trainers became his drill sergeants, pushing him past points of comfort he never knew he had. The pain of sore muscles replaced the pain of labored breathing. Sweat became the currency with which he purchased his new life. Social media, which once chronicled his feasts, now became a public ledger of his progress. He posted videos of himself drenched in sweat, grinding through workouts, his face a mask of determination. This wasn't for show, it was for accountability. He was letting the world in on the struggle, making the transformation a part of his narrative, ensuring there was no turning back. The journey was not a straight line. There were plateaus, days when the scale wouldn't budge, moments of intense craving where the ghost of his old self would whisper temptations. The true test of any transformation is not in the first burst of motivation, but in the grueling middle chapters, when the novelty has worn off and only the discipline remains. He had to learn to negotiate with himself, to understand the difference between a setback and a failure. A cheat meal wasn't a collapse. It was a planned detour on a very long road. He leaned on his circle, his trainers, his chef, his close friends and family, to keep him anchored when his resolve wavered. He was rebuilding his body, but he was also fortifying his mind. Every completed workout, every healthy meal chosen over an old vice, was a brick laid in the foundation of his new identity. The man who could command a room with his voice was now learning to command every cell in his body with his will. The results began to manifest, first in whispers, then in shouts. The scale numbers dropped, but more importantly, his energy levels soared. The man who got winded walking upstairs was now boxing for rounds, running miles, moving with an agility that defied his former image. His features, once softened by layers of fat, grew sharp and defined. His jawline emerged. His eyes seemed brighter, more present. The physical change was staggering, a public metamorphosis that captivated fans and fitness enthusiasts alike. But the greater victory was private. It was the deep, restful sleep. It was the clarity of mind. It was the disappearance of the medical warnings that had haunted him. He wasn't just adding years to his life. He was adding life to his years. The music reflected this change too. There was a renewed vigor, a different energy in his verses. The boss was still the boss, but now the power felt earned in a new, more profound way. It wasn't just the power of wealth. It was the power of self-mastery. Rick Ross's transformation is a modern-day parable. It proves that no one is permanently imprisoned by their past or their physique. It demonstrates that the most impressive empire you will ever build is the one you call your body. He traded the weight of the world for the weight of the barbell. He traded the shackles of unhealthy habits for the freedom of mobility. He went from XXL to fit, from a figure of stationary grandeur to a testament of dynamic power. He didn't lose himself in the process. He found a more potent, more durable version of the boss. He is living proof that it is never too late to rewrite your story, to shed the skin of who you were, to reveal the titan you were always meant to be. The mansion is still there, the cars are still there, the legacy in music is intact. But his greatest asset, his most valuable piece of real estate, is the reclaimed territory of his own health.